Hi everybody, welcome to Beyond the Lines. My name is Sarah, I'm the artist by Pinselgeschichten, and today I'm gonna finish the foreground on my current page, which is Geillis Duncan in her working area, preparing all the herbs and such. And I'm gonna talk to you about how I shade wood to have it look all not as contrasty because everything is in the shadow, but still keep some part of contrast and have some definition in a certain area. And I'm also talking to you about, I think it was inspiration, color inspiration, where I get it from and what kind of things I avoid. So I hope you have fun and let's get going. So let's finish at least this pattern here. So in case you're new to the show and you haven't seen what I've colored already, this is what it looks like so far. I zoomed in quite a bit because I think it is way more fun for you guys to see details. And I'm just gonna continue from last week and start coloring the pattern here. And I'm going way darker for these indentations and have a little lighter of a brown here on those vines. So I'm just layering and layering dark sepia, Payne's gray, and indigo blue, which in case you're new to the show and to the channel, is my favorite shading color. A warm dark indigo blue. So it's been a couple of days since I worked on this page and I feel re-energized to tackle all of these intricate patterns here and do some repetitive work, because this is what it is. Very, very repetitive. But I guess it's fine, because you gotta do that if you want to complete a certain picture, and well, it happens to come with intricate patterns. So I'm going very, very dark for these sections here to be able to pull them back into the shadowy bits of the painting. And by the way, sorry for any background noise, I forgot to close my kitchen door so you can hear my dishwasher running, because this is live. And I'm kind of too lazy to get up now, pause the video and close the door. Yes, that's how lazy I am sometimes. Most of the times I'm not. I'm actually willing to put in the work, but with some things I like to take the shortcut or just not really care as much. And the dishwasher as a background noise definitely fits the bill for me not wanting to get up and do the extra work. Think it's not too crappy on the ears. If it is, you gotta let me know in the comment section so that I put that on my checklist for when I set up for a video. And I'm just turning my paper or my book. Well, it's both. It's paper and it's a book. Turning it to have a comfortable position for my hand when I color, which I find very important, and I'm telling you that again and again in my videos. I think I've said it I don't know, hundreds of times. But in case you're a new viewer, welcome, for one. And second, you gotta know that this is a tool I use for keeping myself comfortable when coloring for hours and hours at a time. So that might be something you want to do as well if you don't already do it. So another thing that's happening quite frequently is this sound. Come on, there it is. That's my vlogging camera, where I record little snippets of my art videos for you to see as a teaser or as a preview of what's to come up. And at this point, I'm actually pretty happy that I recently bought those pencil extenders, because I'm getting to the point that I'm definitely gonna use them at the sepia and at the Payne's Gray as well, because it's just way more comfortable. Well, why not do that right now? I've got them here, I think. Yeah, they're on my desk. So got two more. And yes, they cost a little bit of money. I think I paid $12 or $6. It's either or for 1, 2, 3, 6 of the extenders, but they're so worth the money. You get a lot more out of your supplies, and that just is so worth the money. Also, it's way more comfortable when you're coloring or drawing. So now I just gotta remember, green is sepia and silver is Payne's Gray. There we go. So this is a little more comfortable for my hand, because again, if you're not new to the channel, you might not know, but I happen to have this wonderful disease called multiple sclerosis, and okay, when it comes to sharpening the pencils, gotta take them out of the extension holders, and I do have a little bit of trouble with getting a firm grip on my pencils when they're, say, this tiny. So these extenders help a lot, and I get way more mileage out of my pencils that way. Otherwise, I would have replaced the indigo one, for example, the one that I just sharpened, because it's just, yeah, very strenuous on my hand. I think that's the best way to describe it. And for these wooden backdrops here, I'm just pretty much going to color them all the same when it comes to how much I shade something. If you look at my page, or if you have seen earlier videos, like previous parts for this particular page, you know that I'm shading a little more towards the left because the light source is at the upper right hand side. But all of these sections here are in the shadow parts, so I can treat them all the same pretty much. Nope, going for the gray first. And the line work on the page already tells me where I need to put my darkest colors, or where it's suggested I put them. It's actually, there is a funny thing that I just realized the last couple of days, or particularly this morning, when I knew, okay, I'm going back to filming another part for the Geillis Duncan coloring page. If you're feeling weird or hesitant, or I don't know, not wanting to go back to a page, but on the other hand, you definitely want to finish it, take another coloring page and color a part of that before coming back to your page. Because I have colored just for pleasure, not for any video work. Let me get the book. I colored in the PlayStation coloring book. And I worked on this piece from God of War. And I just did the upper body, pretty much the skin tone there. And it made quite the difference when it comes to wanting to get back to this particular page and coloring something repetitive over and over again, you know, like this pattern here, or have a bigger section where I need to use the same colors, plural, because the rest of the desk will have pretty much the same color scheme. It will just be a little lighter. So it might be a little tedious for somebody to color a bigger section of a scenery in the same color scheme, or just have a super repetitive pattern. I mean, you could be into that, of course. I'm not gonna say it's unlikely, especially when you're a person that likes to color mandalas, for example. You're definitely into repetitive patterns. I'm not one of them. I like them when it's more of a tiny mandala, but like a full-on page, that's not really my cup of tea. I do like sceneries a lot, like this one, or just I don't know, a flower wreath or something like that. I like something with it sounds so weird, with a full picture. You know what I mean, right? I just don't like to color patterns that much. And when I have to, though, to complete a page, I need to have a little bit of a palette cleanser in between, to be able to spend the time and effort I want to spend at a certain page and not rush a certain part. Because it's, I'd say, pretty easy for me to, well, rush a certain part, just because I'm not the biggest fan of coloring a particular kind of part, like a pattern or something. And if I look through my drawers of coloring books, I think I only have scenery ones. There might be a pattern page in some of those books here and there, but mostly not, I'd say. I do have the Kerry Rosan's books, I do have the Hannah Carlson books, the Jasmine Beckett Griffith book, one of them, Marvel coloring book, PlayStation coloring book. I mean, in the PlayStation book there's patterns in there that I'm probably only color at the very end in case I want to finish that book. But other than that, I will probably not touch them. So I'm definitely one of those scenery people. I like to, well, just color that way, make something pretty. I mean, it's also pretty with the patterns, don't get me wrong. But I just need a little more for me to really spend a lot of time with a coloring page. And it all starts way before I even put the first little tiny pigment on top of a coloring page. I usually spend a lot of time planning out my page, thinking about what I want to achieve, what kind of feeling I want to convey. And when I say I spend a lot of time with it, that's like 5 or 10 minutes maybe. It's not that I sit there for hours or days or weeks to figure out, okay, what do I want to do with this page? It usually happens to come to me rather quickly. I kind of see a picture of the complete page in my brain, like in my mind. And then it's quote unquote only my job to execute, to do the work, to get the thing that I see in my mind on the page. But every so often, I don't know, maybe like 2 or 3 times a year, I just like to sit here and flip through my color books and see what kind of pages I still have to color, just to maybe get an inspiration for something, look back at old coloring pages, maybe find a color scheme that I don't use too often that I really like, and then get back to that color scheme with the page that I'm working on at the time, or that I'm planning to start. This is something I do every so often, and I wonder, are you doing the same thing? If you're a colorist and you really enjoy coloring books, do you do the same thing? Or do you prefer to get your inspiration from other colorists and you're perusing lots and lots of videos on YouTube or pictures on Instagram? What's your go-to thing there? I wonder. I tend to look at a lot of pictures on Instagram. I'm not so much the video perusing kind of person, but that is just because I have a watch list on YouTube of videos I definitely want to watch that is over 140 videos long. And most of those videos are 1 or 2 hours long. So I don't want to put anything on there just to put it onto the watch page, and I don't want to take away from the time that I already want to spend on the videos that I have on my watch list. And they're mostly politics or society, like I don't know, book authors, or actors, activists, people that just do something for the betterment of society. And there's a couple of channels where I pretty much watch every video, and one of the English ones is, for example, the San Francisco Jewish Community Center. They do have a channel. And my voice, where's my voice going? And they do have wonderful interviews with, like I said, book authors, I don't know, historians, professors, cooks, which is also something I like. It's just all across the board, just people that they find are interesting. So they've got either interviews or lectures, and I pretty much watch every video. There's some where I didn't watch all to the end because the topic wasn't that interesting to me, but I'd say like 95% of all the videos I watch start to finish. And like I said, they're a little longer, and I have, I think, 10 or 15 of those alone on my watch list. And well, I think I can only spend so much time on watching videos. Usually I do something else while I watch, and having art videos on them, especially coloring videos in real time, or that have been like streamed live, and then there's a video capture. There's like 2 or 3 hour videos out there that are beautiful when it comes to coloring and ideas and flipping books and just, well, inspiring people. But I don't have the time. So I wonder, what is your priority when you go to the topic of what inspires you, or how do you work with getting inspired for, say, a certain coloring book, a certain coloring page? Is there something that you prefer? I would love for you to let me know in the comments, because I'm very curious. And I don't know, maybe there's something there for me that I can check out that I didn't even didn't even have on my radar yet. So I know people will maybe say Pinterest. I'm not on Pinterest. It's just too much for me. It would be sensory overload. Because, well, if you Google search something, pictures from Pinterest come up. And they're always very pretty and inspiring, but they would probably trigger too much for me. And I'm not good at handling that. So Unfortunately, Pinterest is not an option for me. And most of the times I find I don't lack inspiration. It's a really weird feeling. It might sound a little arrogant, but that's not how I mean it. But I seem to be content with what my brain comes up with, like what it leads me to go for, especially with colors, less so with line work. But yeah, I tend to be inside my head a lot and not seek outside inspiration. I mean, I do get inspiration if I want to or not. It's just you're living. You've got things you see all day long that may not have anything to do with coloring or artwork, but they trigger something. Like, for example, I know that once Jan is home from university today, we're going food shopping. And it is the time of the season where the first spring flowers, like tulips and, oh god, what's the English word? I think it's similar. German one is Hyazinthe. Haha, a wonderful word. Hyacinth, is that a word? Would that be the flower? I don't know. But at the entrance of our grocery store, they have a section where, well, they sell flowers, and now is the time where those lovely colors are popping up. So we, for example, there last week, when was it? Friday or Saturday, they had daffodils at the grocery store, and just that, I think it's daffodils, yeah. Just that array of yellow jumping in your eye, and you are drawn to them. You look at them and it's like, oh, pretty. It inspires. So at least it inspires me. I might then use that color in a coloring page or a painting or something. So what I mean is I do have so many things that inspire my coloring just by looking at my outside world. So just by going food shopping, or I don't know, reading a book and the cover has a particularly cool color combo or something like that. It just I'm a sponge like that, I guess, or my brain is a sponge. So I seem to use daily life as my color scheme inspiration for my pictures. So yeah, I just hadn't noted that at the last food shopping trip, because though I'm quite in tune with myself and I self-reflect quite a bit, some things I don't realize right away. So I know this is not a new thing I'm doing. No, I would say I've been like that forever, maybe. But I just didn't realize it. And maybe there was no need for me to think about, because my art brain is always going. So I was just used to taking anything from my daily work as an inspiration. Like I said, especially for colors, because I'm a color person. I do like line work. I I really like it, but if I can choose, it's the colors that draw me in and that make me want to do a painting or drawing or a coloring page. I know. Weird brain. So I'm almost done with this part. Just a little more. And then I can move on to a little bit of a lighter shade of brown and work on those vines here. I want to have this section done first before I do the legs of the table. One thing that just popped into my head that I have to look up because I'm not all that sure it even exists. There's different kinds of topics for coloring books out there, but I wonder if there's one for board games, because if there is, I would definitely buy that. I'll have to check that out. I haven't seen anything yet, but I didn't really search for it either. But algorithms are actually pretty much working. So I think I would have gotten it recommended if there was one. I don't know. Maybe it's a subgenre that is not as requested yet. Second to last section. Oh, let's do that tiny one here first, because then I'm at the last little bit. A smidge of the Payne's Gray and of course my trusty indigo. There we go. That is enough for the vlog. So this is what it looks like now. And now I can move on to these wooden vines, and I would take one of the, or maybe two, one or two of the, oh excuse me, oh gosh, whew. Where did that yarn come from? I'm gonna take one of the browns that I also used on the face of the table, and I'm thinking I want to go for the darkest one of those, because this is still shaded, so I'm taking this one and work with the sepia to color this part of the table. So let's start up here. Come to mama. All right. So start up here. I'm bringing in my sepia on top. Just to darken it up a bit. But still it looks lighter than the bits and pieces I just colored, so there's enough of a contrast there to not have every part of that side of the table mushed together in a dark brown blob. And then onto the lower section. Right, just a little more here. Okie dokie, now I can move on to this side here. I'm going around the table first and then color the vines because I want that frame to look pretty decent when it comes to having everything blended out. So I'm working on it right away. So on this lower section here, there's a little bit of light bouncing off from that window, it goes down to the floor and then bounces up here. So I will shade this part a little differently than the upper part of that frame. Which means I'm bringing in the light ochre that I used, and now I have to see. So here's the window, and straight down in this area here there's a little bit of light bouncing off, so it gets a little bit of a warmer touch just at the very bottom, not too much. But just that tiny little bit should be enough to indicate, okay, it's a very bright and sunny day, and it's late summer, early spring, early autumn, and there's this golden light coming through the windows and well, bouncing off of the furniture. And by the way, I hadn't said I'm using the walnut brown for this particular part of the table here. Now I'm bringing in my sepia. And back here in that section, there's the shadows. So anything up to that round middle emblem kind of a thing, there's the shadows where Geillis is blocking the light from bouncing off of the floor. So I can just color it the same way as I colored this upper part of the frame here. Okay, now I need to get a little lighter because I'm getting into the section where the light ochre is laid down. So I'm going towards the upper part of the frame of the table. And I'm bringing in some more of the walnut brown. And another layer of the light ochre. And it's just a very subtle difference if you look at it, but it's enough to indicate, okay, bounce off of the light. Now I can go on to, ouch, having a spasm in my legs, ow, ow, ow. And then also coloring those vines here. And I'm mainly gonna use the walnut brown and just a little bit of the sepia. Let me see, am I in frame? Yes, I am. Since I have the paper saturated and it can't take any more pigment here on these pieces in between, I don't have to be very particular with my way of laying down pigment. I just can go in larger ovals or circle motions. I don't have to think about maybe coloring a section that I don't want to have colored, because I put down so much pigment on these sections in between that I can go rather carelessly now. That's, by the way, one reason why I like to work from the background to the foreground, which is not only on a whole page, but also with certain objects. Jeez, talking, Sarah. Jeez. And it might be a little more fiddly in the beginning, like really putting down your pigment, blending everything together, getting the colored pencil cover every nook and cranny, so that you then can later on just color carelessly on top for the sections in between and not have another fiddly part. Because would I have colored the other way around, like coloring the vine first, and then going around the bits and coloring the backdrop, I would have had 2 sessions of fiddly coloring, and like this it's only 1.5, because I will be a little more controlled with my movements when it comes to using sepia on top, because I don't want to just cover the whole vine, but only have like maybe a little bit here on top or here in these curves, something like that. So that's why I said 1.5 sessions of fiddly coloring versus 2. And coming back to not straining my hand too much, I find this part here is a relief for my muscles, for my nerves, and like that I can maybe color a little longer all in one go and keep some of the energy and coordination for an upcoming part of the page where I want to work on today maybe, and not run into the problem that I can't control my hand anymore. It's just pretty much a relief or a break for certain movements in my hand. And that's one of the reasons why I like to color from background to foreground. Another reason, of course, is because of my color values and saturation and such. But that's a different kind of a story. That's something I do, or I did even before I had trouble controlling my hand for a long time. It's more like technique or skills related than just energy related. So the coloring from background to foreground when it comes to my color values and such, and the amount of detail I put into a certain part of, say, a coloring page, that happens, or that's more related into planning out an art piece, and it's more related to the outcome of the picture. So what's it gonna look like once I'm done? But this part here is more related to preservation of my ability to color or work on projects for longer hours. And that's more a health related decision on what technique to use and in what order I want to color something. Did that make sense? It makes sense in my head. But I'm not sure if I use the right words now, and I don't remember everything I said. Yay, brain. Good morning. Maybe I should have a tea to get you going. Actually, I had a wonderful vegetable juice this morning to get my brain going. I had sweet potato, red beets, and carrots, and it was so yummy. And it really gets me going in the morning. But I guess today it isn't enough. My brain might need a tea or something. So once I have these vines colored, I might just make myself a lovely cup of Earl Grey. But first I want to finish this part here, because I want to see progress. All right, almost there. All right, back to my sepia pencil, which I want to sharpen once more. So, am I in frame? Yes, I am. So I'm just adding a tiny little bit of sepia here on these vines. Not too much though, because I don't want them to be too dark. I want them to stand out. And I'm going with the curves of the vines and having a little bit of a darker section or darker shade of the brown wherever they curve in. So here on the lower part, for example. And then here on the upper part. And then again, lower part. And then again, upper part. And guess what? Lower part. And upper one. Now the other one. So I started with this one. Now I'm going with the other one again, shading or adding a little bit of a sepia here on the top of the flower, and then extending that to the first curve, and then it moves to the other side, and now we have overlapping vines. So the one behind gets a little bit of a shading all across the vine itself, not only on an upper or lower part. And I'm extending it towards the lower part for this curve here. So here's another overlap. So one behind gets a little more shading. And we were here. Now the inward curve is on the upper end. And I'm disregarding the leaves here because I think it's enough to have a little bit of a shading on the vine itself and not on every tiny little bit. So now we've got the vine crossing over here, and I'm just gonna extend that full shadow to the curve. Same goes for the other side. And this section is a little darker because there's another vine overlapping part, and the curve was rather narrow. So we got that here, and then it moves on to crossing here. So this one gets shaded and this one gets shaded all the way, and then extended into the shadow of these curves. And I was here, so this one gets shadow on the lower end. There we go. Now on to that round emblem. So I think I'm gonna go just with the circle. And extending the sepia to this part a little bit. Squinting makes for a very good tool on checking your values. So squint, okay, and then I can go on the right hand side of the vine, add my shadows, and give this all another layer of walnut, and then the table should be done. So let's color them simultaneously, both of the vines. We've got an overlap here and here, and it goes into the lower part. And this one gets a little bit of the sepia here on top. So we've got that. That one has to be extended and also covered all the way because we have another vine overlap. And this one has a curve here, and then it moves to the other side and it has the curve here. So this is where the shadow goes. Next overlap. And we've got another one up here. That I'm going to extend to the other side of the vine because there's another overlap. Man, there's a lot of them. So we've got a little bit of dark here because this is where the inward curve is of this particular vine, and down here there's a shadow, and then there's a curve coming up here, so I'm gonna add a little more sepia on that part. And that is pretty much putting in the darks on my vines, and now I can go back to the walnut, give it a final layer on the parts that I didn't cover with sepia, just to bring the two together and blend everything. And then I can make myself a cup of tea because then I have that section finished and I can reward myself with an Earl Grey. Almost there. Now I really have to pace myself to not rush, because I really want that tea. Guys, I can tell ya. I've got a funny mind. And there's the last leg of that part of the table. Almost there. There we go. That is this section finished, and now I can make myself a cup of tea. And I'm all teed up. So, onto the legs of the table. I gotta... It's like this. You are able to see. You remember the window is here. So I'm starting with that leg here, and I'm gonna start with where the light bounces off, which is on the left hand side of the table leg. So I'm just bringing in my light ochre, that's what it's called. And then I'm moving on to the walnut. Because there's no midsection like there was on the face of the table. I don't need to go very light there because anything else is facing away from the window, and therefore it is shaded or darker. Now I'm getting to the part of the page that is most difficult to color, which is the edge. So I gotta be careful to not bend the paper too much. Going over my light ochre part as well, because it's not light yellow, but it's just a reflection of the sunlight coming in. Onto my sepia. Going over it completely, not the light ochre part, but just the walnut part. Then I'm bringing in the Payne's Gray and the indigo, because you can see here there's line work that indicates that things are darker and that they show off the shape of the leg, which is round. Also adding a little bit, just a smidge of the Payne's Gray here onto the light ochre. And then I'm coming in with the darkest shade, which is my indigo blue. Just bringing that in. Can you see? Yes, you can. Back to my walnut brown. And of course, just a little bit of sepia, because I kind of want to match that color here, and it's just a little too light. So I'm just adding a little more. More sepia, especially here on these narrow lines. I'm just going over the sections where I used indigo and Payne's gray. Just adding a tiny bit here. These lines. And then I'm bringing in a little more of my light ochre just to blend it all together. There we go. First table leg colored. And I can have a sip of tea. Oh, it's steaming hot. Oh, that's so yummy. Oh, that's comfort. Ooh, do you have a comfort drink? I mean, I know of comfort food, but do you have a comfort drink? Mine would definitely be Earl Grey tea. Earl Grey tea with a little bit of honey. Oh, awesome. Okay, on to the next table leg. I'm gonna take this. Oh, I'm not in frame. I'm taking this one here. There is not really a lot of light hitting, because Geillis is blocking the light with her dress. However, I might add a smidge of... no, I actually won't. I won't add the light ochre. I'm just gonna start with my walnut brown. And then move on to sepia. And the darker side is the left-hand side. There is a little bit of residual light here on the right-hand side, but only very little, so I'm gonna color the shadows towards the left-hand side. And now I'm going in with Payne's Gray. Darkening up the left-hand side. And of course, indigo for the darkest shadows, just layering on top. And I'm using the line work the illustrator gave me to determine where my indigo goes. So for all of these tiny little lines here, these speckles, I'm gonna put down indigo on them. Like so. Then back to the walnut brown. Fighting with the edge of the page again. Let's try it this way. Yeah, that's better. And for those narrow strips here again, I'm bringing in some more sepia. Let me check my values. I need to go a little darker here. So I'm just gonna add this dark sepia brown to it. on the edge here some more of the walnut brown. Like so. And that gives me another sip of my tea. On to the third leg. The fourth one isn't visible on the page, so I just gotta color one more leg before I can decide if I want to have that candelabra be colored with colored pencils or if I want to move it way into the background and have it done with the other media I'm gonna use, or maybe have the other media and a little bit of colored pencil on top. Decisions, but I think so there's the candelabra, by the way, that's the foot of it. I will think about that. Let me check the video. Yeah, I'm gonna think about that until I record the next video. So this is the last item here to color for me today in this video. And then I can think about what I want to do with the candelabra. So I'm going in with the same color scheme as with this leg, because this is even more in the shadow bits where no light hits directly and even less light is bouncing off. Edge of the paper. On top with sepia, just as for the base color, because this is quite the dark part of the room, therefore darker shade of the browns for the wood coloring. And now I'm moving on to the Payne's Gray and shading my wooden piece. So this one here is another one of these moved into the background, like the darker bits behind the vines. So I'm going way darker here. But There's also shadow here on the left-hand side. And then I'm going for the next section here of the table leg. Also shading this quite a lot because there's less and less light hitting and bouncing off. Onto my indigo for the darkest bits. Excuse me. Now I'm coming back with my walnut brown. And of course, just as usual, a little bit more of the sepia. Bringing in a little more of my walnut, just a tiny bit, to blend some of those bigger sections here and give this a little bit more of a warmer brownish hue. And now I gotta check. Yep, that looks pretty good. Let me pull everything into frame. There we are. This is the video for today. I'm gonna ponder for a while what I want to do with the candelabra. I'm gonna decide that in the just before I record the next video. I'm gonna enjoy my tea now. I hope you had fun watching this video, and maybe there were some infos in there for you that well, make your coloring adventures a little more, I don't know, exciting, different. There's so many words I could say. Anything that it adds to your coloring experience, I think I would be very happy with. I'm gonna see you next week with the next part of this page. Thank you very much for watching. The blog post for the colors I used today, it's only 5 pencils that I used today, but they are the compilation, the blog post is up on my blog by now. You can find it in the description box below. There is a link to my web page, pinselgeschichten.de, which is my blog, and you can find things there. In case you watch the video way later, like, I don't know, a year after this is published, just go to my web page, search for the video name, and you will be directed to the blog post and can find things easily, I hope. If you're new to the channel, I would love for you to subscribe, peruse the channel, look for art videos, board game videos, vlogs, and all that stuff. And if you like this video, I would also very much appreciate if you'd give it a thumbs up, because that helps me see that you like what I do, and it also helps other people find this video. I'm gonna see you, like I said, next week. Have a wonderful week. Do some coloring. Enjoy it all the way. And have fun, guys. Bye.